Congratulations! In this week's episode of Death Parade, we are finally getting into the backstory of the black-haired woman, the circumstances behind her death. In fact, this week's episode reveals her name. So just like my previous reviews, if you haven't seen this week's episode, go watch it, come back to this review, and we can talk about this week's amazing episode, which is building up to the finale of Death Parade, one of the best anime I've seen in quite some time, and one of the big contenders for best anime of 2015. So let's get right into it. What is the name of the black-haired woman? Her name is Chiyuki. I'm so glad that I can finally start referring to this character by name, because it's really hard to just keep calling her the black-haired woman. But Chiyuki is an interesting character. Not only has she been hanging around the Quindecim for a long period of time, but she still hasn't really regained all of her memories quite yet, or the ones that she has actually regained, she's not talking about them. And we do get to learn that in this week's episode that human souls cannot actually reside here for long periods of time because her actual soul, or the body that's actually covering the puppet body, is completely crumbling away. She's not going to be able to stick around for a long time, and Decim is going to be forced to have to make a judgment. Is she going to be reincarnated? Is she going to the void? Who knows, because we still know nothing about her backstory. There are some hints to it in this week's episode, and there are some hints to it in the preview for the next episode, but this one was interesting because we sort of went back in time to multiple events. We got to see Decim on his very first day again when he had his brand new memories implanted into him, when he was being reinstated as a bartender by Nona, and then we also get this other scene where Nona is still trying to collect the memories of Chiyuki, and she finds them real easily, and we also get to learn, this was something that was mentioned in the previous episodes, they somehow have access to real-world alcohol. They brought this up, I believe it was Quinn who mentioned it in a previous episode, but this is actually what Nona ends up giving her as a gift for getting back Chiyuki's memories. But the other part of this episode is there actually is a game, and this is by far the most laid-back game you're ever going to see in Death Parade, and that's because the opponent this week is going to be an old woman, and she's going to be going up against Decim and against Chiyuki. And the reason Decim is getting involved is because they're playing Old Maid, and you gotta have a couple of opponents to make this game work. So, it's not gonna be like the previous games at all, where they have like a body part attached to it at all. They're actually going to have images on the card, which is going to try and draw out their memories. Now, they could have gone into an extreme dark territory with this episode, especially with the fact that they do have an old lady. And I'm kind of glad that they didn't, because this woman was just so nice, and probably one of just the most kind-hearted people that we've seen in the entire series. We get to learn in this episode that she was an old manga artist who never quite made it, but still had an amazing and fulfilled life. She never had children, but her manga drawings and everything else was sort of like her children, so to speak. My first thought when they introduced this lady is that because she was a manga artist and that she could draw, was that maybe she was the creator of that book, Chauveau. Apparently that's not the case, but she even does know of it, and even Chiyuki tries to bring up the fact that maybe she was the original illustrator, but that's not the case. Apparently it was just a very popular story. And this is when she finally starts to get some of her memories back. We have a short scene with her mother, which does deconfirm one of my theories, where when we saw her and her mother for the very first time, we only saw the lower half of her mother's face. I theorized that maybe Chiyuki could have been the mother at some point, and that could have actually just been her daughter because it looks just like her. But no, that's actually her. And one of the biggest themes of this episode, which goes along with that scene, is how people can actually communicate with each other. Even if we speak different languages, if we smile or if we frown, we actually understand what's going on with each other. And this all ties into the story of Chauveau, where this character communicates with people because she's deaf. She actually just smiles or frowns a lot of the time. And that's what Chiyuki loves so much about this character. And what I also love about the story of Chauveau is it also involves like ice skating. And there's a scene in the intro of the show and in the preview of this week's episode which sort of brings some things full circle. There's a scene in the intro where you see this random character who looks like they're skating right behind Decim, and I've been trying to figure out who the hell that is the entire time. And if you actually look at the preview for the next episode, it looks like there's going to be some sort of like ice skating going on, which is going to involve Chiyuki. It looks like she's actually that character who is in the intro doing that, and that is some really strange foreshadowing, and they made it really obscured so you really couldn't tell who it was, and it's amazing that they had one of those like big answers right in front of our face the entire time. So the story of Chauveau involves ice skating. She happens to be an ice skating enthusiast. This might have actually like caused her death somehow. This could be like related to how she died. It could be like another ice-related accident. But they're still not giving us the answers quite yet. And there's also another thing this week, which is involving the character of Ginty. There was one small scene where both him and Deckham are just talking about why they have to judge, and they just do it because they do it. That's what they're told to do. They're basically just robots. But at the end of the episode, there's a scene where Ginty is using his weird water powers and his weird little flasks, and it looks like he's bringing someone back. I'm not sure who this is, who it could be, but he seems to be really happy about all of this, which is really strange, because, you know, the Arbiters really aren't supposed to be able to show emotion, despite the fact that they kind of do all the time, but whatever, I'm willing to look the other way on that one. And there's also a scene with Oculus, who is probably going to be the closest thing we have to an antagonist in this series. I don't fully believe that he's going to be a villain-type character, but he seems to be up to something. He's also got some weird freaky-deaky powers with his goatee, which he can use to, like, actually absorb people's memories. That's pretty weird. And also, his eyes are just creepy as hell. I've already, like, talked a little bit about how the Arbiters have, like, their own special set of eyes, but his are very distinct and different, and almost cat or snake-like. Just real creepy. I really can't wait to see where they're going with all of this. Just, it's still got my attention. So, what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Death Parade, lots of answers, lots of questions. We still don't know everything, but we are getting closer and closer to the finale of this series, and honestly, I can't wait to see how it's all going to end. And I didn't expect them to start getting into Chiyuki's backstory so quickly, but now that it's here, the momentum is just building, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. The interesting thing about this week's episode is that it was actually kind of like a typical one. Like, there was a game and everything, and that old woman was just so nice. She was just such a nice lady. It's good that we had an episode that actually ended with a little bit of hope in it, because this series has certainly been kind of like a roller coaster of emotions. There have definitely been more intense episodes, and there have been heartwarming ones, and that's why I think I kind of appreciated this one a little bit more. Still just slowly getting to learn about her and learning that the puppets actually start to degrade over time is going to add a little bit of tension to the rest of the series, which is great, which means they're not going to be able to dawdle too much anymore. They're really going to have to get into this, and I really hope they still explain, like, why this place exists. I love that Deckham actually brought that question up. Why do they judge? What is the reason of this? What is the purpose of this place? What created it? Why is it even around? I really hope they address that, or at least start to point us in the right direction so we can come up with our own interpretation. All I know is this week's episode was nice. We got to learn a little bit more about the character of Chiyuki. Just the fact that she has a name makes me want to rewatch all the other episodes again. Just knowing her name will actually change that dynamic. And I really can't wait to see how this whole Chauveau thing is actually going to tie into all of this. So all in all, this was another fantastic episode of Death Parade, which is still not giving us all the answers we want quite yet, but it's getting us intrigued enough to want to watch the end of the series. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5, a bombshell of an episode that you definitely need to check out if you've been following the series. And get ready, we are almost there for the finale of Death Parade. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Death Parade in the comments section below. What did you think about the whole revelation behind Chiyuki? And what do you want to see from the rest of Death Parade? Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. You should also check out our brand new video podcast series, The Powerful Nerdcast. Both me and my good friend Christian just sat down and we talked about all of the brand new spring anime that is getting ready to start. What shows do you want us to watch and discuss? Watch that video and let us know. Thank you guys again for watching, and stay dandy, baby.